Let's say you've decided to buy an RTX 5070. You'll likely come across many different models such as the MSI Ventus, ASUS TUF, and Gigabyte Windforce. But some of these actually have a lot of issues, and there are some options you should definitely steer clear of. So which one should you pick? To make your decision easier, I've ranked the RTX 50 models from best to worst in a tier list. Since there are differences in cooling, overclocking, and design between models, this is a pretty important topic for some. Without further ado, if you've subscribed, let's jump in. Firstly, I have some warnings to make. I've made this list with the cooling performance, the overclock potential, and the design differences in mind. When comparing the cards, I've taken the averages of all GPUs of each model. For example, if a model had a great 5070 Ti GPU, but a bad 5090 GPU, this affected that card's position in the tier list. Another important point, as you know, the RTX 50 series had a pretty rough launch. I've made a video about this before as well. Because of this, there are far fewer product reviews and performance tests on the internet compared to the RTX 40 series, so it was really hard to evaluate some models. So for those, I had to rely on the limited data and make some educated guesses. I am making this video because it was highly requested in the comments, so if you want to see a video on a certain subject, feel free to suggest it in the comments. Maybe the next video will be your suggestion. Now, to keep things moving, I'm displaying the rest of the criteria on the screen. Feel free to pause and read if you're interested. Let's start with the D tier. Yes, there's no E or F tiers here because even the worst models in the RTX 50 lineup aren't as bad as the worst in the RTX 40 series, so I found it suitable to place the weakest models on the D tier. In this tier, there are models that you need to keep at a distance. Since power consumption is generally low in both the RTX 40 and 50 series, these cards don't really overheat. But the cards on the D tier offer weaker performance than those in the other tiers. If you don't want to waste your money, I would advise you to be very careful about these models. Gainword Ghost and Palit Dual. Palit and Gainword are actually manufactured by the same company, Palit Microsystems, but their designs are quite different. Comparing them, in some GPUs, the Palit Dual runs slightly cooler than the Ghost, but the difference is usually no more than 2 degrees. Meanwhile, the difference between their hotspot temperatures can get around 4 degrees Celsius. The real distinction between them is mostly in their design. The main reason the Ghost and the Dual cards are in the lowest rank in the D tier is their low quality. Even though they are larger than other D tier models, their temperatures and their RPMs are still higher. Furthermore, judging by what we've seen in their RTX 40 series models, I don't think their VRMs are very good either, which can be a real limitation if you want to overclock. As of the time I'm making this video, only the RTX 5060 and the 5060 Ti 8GB models are available. If a 5070 GPU version comes out in the future, I'd recommend staying away from that as well. Gigabyte Windforce Dual Fan. It was a little bit hard to find reviews and tests for this card, so I had to base my evaluation mostly on assumptions. The issues seen on its RTX 40 series sadly continue onto the RTX 50 series as well. Because of its poor cooling performance and its small size, this card shouldn't be picked. Of course, the airflow of the case you're planning to use will significantly affect your GPU's temperature as well. In the Windforce series, there aren't any other dual fan models besides the 5060 and the 5060 Ti. There are also 16GB versions of the Windforce 5060 and the 5060 Ti, whereas there aren't any of the Ghost. At least they didn't try to put 2 fans on higher GPUs as well. Even though Ghost cards are bigger, they run hotter than Windforce. So I placed the Windforce 1 tier above the Ghost in the D tier. MSI Inspire 2X. You might not have heard of this card before. The Inspire series is more compact, more affordable, and has a simpler design compared to more popular models such as the Supreme and Gaming Trio. To be honest, I'm not really sure which card is the better one between the Windforce and the Inspire. As their sizes are very similar compared to each other, it is hard to draw a clear comparison. Plus, as Inspire cards aren't really widespread and as it's hard to find reviews for it, possible assessments are mostly based on assumptions and might not be totally accurate. If you're looking to buy an RTX 5060 or an RTX 5060 Ti, it might make more sense to ignore this model altogether. MSI Ventus 2X and Shadow 2X. The Shadow and the Ventus are actually almost the same card. The only difference between them is just the colors and small design details. Compared to other models I've listed, it's possible to find more reviews and tests on these cards, so I did not have to rely on assumptions. They are bigger than other D-tier models besides the Gainword Ghost, and there are RTX 5060, 5060 Ti, and 5070 models available. Just like in the RTX 40 series, as you move up to higher-end GPUs, the cooling performance starts to become insufficient and RPMs get really high. So, the most sensible option in this series is the models with the RTX 5060 GPU. As their cooling blocks are bigger and better, I placed this model higher than the other cards in the D tier. As much as I don't really recommend these models in higher GPUs, you can go with these two models for GPUs up to the RTX 5070. Plus, the product range is wider compared to other models as well. Now we are moving on to C tier, which has more preferable cards. There are some pretty big differences between the cards in this tier in terms of performance and quality. The models on the right side of C tier can perform poorly at times, but as we move further along to the left side, we can see more successful and reliable options. Gigabyte Windforce 3X. Once again, there aren't many reviews for this card, and it displays big similarities to the RTX 40 series. As you move up to higher-end GPUs, the cooling performance starts to fall short. Its size is relatively small, and the fans run at a very high RPM. The BIOS mode switches from quiet or Q mode to performance or P mode are especially unbalanced. For example, if you use the RTX 5070 Ti Windforce at Q or quiet BIOS mode, the fans run at a low RPM, but the GPU temperature can rise to as high as 75 degrees. This is a pretty bad number compared to its rivals. Meanwhile, the fans can go as high as 2200 RPM in the P or performance BIOS mode, which is pretty high and loud. Keeping all of this in mind, while it is true that triple fan graphics cards generally offer better cooling, in this model you don't get any of the benefits of having triple fans. If you're looking to buy a Windforce, I advise you to stay away from models with higher-end GPUs, namely the RTX 5070 Ti and higher. MSI Ventus 3X and Shadow 3X. These two cards display very similar qualities to each other. We need in-depth reviews to say that one is better than the other, but as the current reviews are insufficient, I need to rely on assumptions here as well. Some models, especially like the 5070 Ti, run at RPMs as high as the aforementioned Windforce cards and at similar temperatures. They are almost the same size as well. The most obvious difference between them is the fact that Ventus models lack the Q and P BIOS modes, so the card is constantly running at one BIOS mode. Whether these cards are a good choice or not depends on which GPU you are buying from the Ventus lineup. Keep in mind that from 5070 onwards, these cards start to fall short in terms of performance. Palit Infinity 3 and Gainword Python 3. These two cards aren't much different from the Ventus and the Windforce models I've talked about earlier. Me ranking them higher doesn't mean that they're better. In fact, it'd be more correct to evaluate the Ventus, Windforce, and these two cards right next to each other. These cards, just like the others, cannot really offer the full advantage of the third fan. Their sizes are smaller than the other two cards I've just mentioned, and the worst of them all, both of these cards are fully plastic. Also, their VRM quality is not really good either, so their RPMs generally hover between 1800 and 2200 RPM, and on their RTX 5070 models, it's possible to see temperatures between 70 and 75 degrees Celsius. Even though I'm not factoring in the price, the fact that these triple fan cards are sold at prices close to dual fan cards feels like a trap to me. These having triple fans could be attention-grabbing, but don't let it fool you. They don't meet quality expectations. The fact that they offer the same RPMs and temperatures as dual fan cards, despite having 3 fans, really sums them up. ASUS Dual. Normally, there are plenty of reviews on ASUS Dual cards, but interestingly, from the RTX 50 series, I could only find detailed reviews for the 5060 model. It's impossible to make a clear comment about the 5060 Ti and the 5070 just by looking at the 5060, so I have to make assumptions based on how the ASUS Dual performed in the RTX 40 series. I will assess the cards assuming the quality of the internals and the cooling performance of the cards were unchanged from the previous generation. The RTX 5060 model generally runs between 65 to 70 degrees, and the fan speeds hover between 1500 and 1900 RPM. Honestly, these temperatures and fan speeds for an entry-level GPU like the 5060 seem a bit high to me. I would have expected it to run colder and quieter compared to the RTX 4060. It being bigger than other dual-fan models is a plus. But as we don't have enough reviews on the 5060 Ti and the 5070, it's hard to say anything for certain about the performances of these cards. This is exactly why I'm placing this card here. The lack of reviews and not seeming to be as competitive as the Dual from the previous generation. Gigabyte Eagle and Eagle Ice. Gigabyte gives the name ICE to the white-colored versions of their graphics cards. At its core, these two cards are generally the same, but their colors differ. This series has 4 different models, consisting of 5060, 5060 Ti, 5070, and 5070 Ti. The 5060 and 5060 Ti have dual fans, and the 5070 and the 5070 Ti come with triple fans, which can be a bit confusing. But there is one thing I'm sure of. Contrary to the models I've just listed, the fans of these models can actually do their jobs better. The 5060 and the 5060 Ti models can run at high RPMs like the Windforces, but they're not as aggressive as the Windforce, and they run a bit cooler. On the 5070 and 5070 Ti side of things, as there aren't many reviews, I have to make assumptions based on the data that we do have. The performance of the 5070 generally seems satisfactory, but I can't really comment on the 5070 Ti since I haven't seen any reviews. Due to the success of their dual fan models, their wide product range, and the higher quality compared to the Windforce, I'm placing the Eagle and the Eagle Ice series on this tier. That said, I'm not entirely sure if Eagle cards are better than ASUS Dual cards. ASUS Duals are larger, and as we saw in the previous generation, they had the best cooling performance among budget-friendly offerings. MSI Gaming X Dual. This line, which is the dual-fan version of MSI's well-established gaming series, is very successful in RTX 50 series as well, as it was in the RTX 40 series. As it guarantees a quiet and cool performance, it deserves a spot on this tier. In fact, it can sometimes even compete with triple-fan models. Its only downside is the small product range. It's only available for the RTX 5060 and the 5060 Ti. ASUS Prime. From this point onwards are cards that you can pick with peace of mind. It's possible to find many reviews about the ASUS Prime models, and this allowed me to make a more accurate and reliable assessment. In fact, even while I was researching for ASUS Dual cards, I constantly came across reviews for the Prime. The lineup covers a wide range of GPUs, ranging from the 5060 to the 5080, and the best part is that it handles all of them pretty well. This success is especially apparent in lower GPUs. For example, I saw that it was able to generally keep the RTX 5080 below 70 degrees, sometimes between 70 and 73 degrees. Of course, it offers this at 60% and higher fan speeds, which is in the range of 1600 to 1900 RPM. Even though it's ASUS's most affordable segment after the Dual, it is very successful from a performance standpoint. One more note. In some GPUs in the ASUS Prime, TUF, and ROG series, special pads named PTM are used instead of thermal pastes. These pads change consistency with heat, providing better thermal conductivity and a longer lifespan. For all these reasons, I'm placing the ASUS Prime on this tier without hesitation. Next up is the B tier. The models in this tier offer slightly better performance and quality than those in the C tier. For an average consumer, this is usually the sweet spot. The prices are more affordable compared to the models in the A tier, and the quality is quite sufficient. If there isn't a big price gap between the models in the C tier, I recommend going with the models in the B tier. Palit Gaming Pro, Gainword Phoenix. Before talking about these models, I want to make 2 important warnings. There are 2 different versions of these cards, called the V1 and the V2. The V1 models don't have a vapor chamber, which is an advanced cooling technology that uses a special liquid and vapor system to quickly and evenly spread heat from the GPU surface, then transfer it to heat pipes and larger cooling areas. This way, the cooling performance is improved by spreading the heat way more efficiently compared to regular metal bases. As it creates a significant difference in the cooling performance, I definitely recommend you go with the V2 model. But, as V2 models came out later, and most reviews were made using the V1 model, my assessment could be a bit inaccurate. Most of the sources I checked only tested the V1 version. With that out of the way, let's talk about the cards themselves. Palit Gaming Pro and the Gainword Phoenix are generally a bit better than the ASUS Prime. As you move up to higher-end GPUs, they do a better job of maintaining cooling performance. In terms of positioning, they are supposed to be competing against the TUF series, but they aren't quite at that level in the RTX 50 series, as they are a nice start for the B tier. I placed them here. They are not fully B tier and not fully C tier either, so you may think of it as a separating line. Palit GameRock Gainward Phantom. These 2 cards are actually the same. They are just sold with a different brand and a different design. Their basic difference is mostly seen on the design of the exterior. The GameRock series stands out with its attention-grabbing RGB lighting and flashy design. Even though there are some minor quality differences, the main distinction is the appearance. I do have to mention this as well. GameRock was really successful in the RTX 30 series. That success slightly decreased in the RTX 40 series, but the brand name was still really powerful. In the RTX 50 series, especially in the 5090 models, there's a significant drop in quality. The cards run at high temperatures and there are next to no differences between the Q and P BIOS modes. So, the GameRock name doesn't quite live up to expectations. It's mostly in the lower-end GPUs like the 5080 and 5070 Ti, where it still stands out. I can say that their VRM layout is the best one in the B tier. As a matter of fact, they are comparable to ones in the A tier in some situations. It's better than the Gaming Pro, that's for sure. That's why I'm placing the GameRock and the Phantom on the B tier. But for now, I can't rank them above the other brands on this list. Gigabyte Gaming OC Gigabyte Aero. Aero is the white version of Gaming OC, and besides the design difference, there's at most a 1 degree Celsius difference in temperatures. In terms of cooling performance, sometimes the GameRock performs better and sometimes the Gaming OC performs better. But there's a clear fact: Gigabyte's fans generally run louder. Plus, GameRock's VRMs are higher quality and more in amount. So why did I place Gaming OC higher than the GameRock then? Because the Gaming OC has a much wider product lineup. Unlike the GameRock, it can be found in all GPUs from the 5060 to the 5090 and displays a similar character in all of them. I can cool well, but I'm loud. I have to talk about a small detail too here. Recently, some Gaming OC models had a thermal gel leakage issue. As I am certain that this problem will be solved in the coming days, I don't consider this a major con. If that's a deal breaker for you, you can place the Gaming OC between the GameRock and the Gaming Pro. MSI Gaming Trio, a card that has kept its usual position. It offers a wide product range, ranging from the 5070 to the 5090, and shines with both its cooling performance and quietness. It has a better cooling performance compared to the GameRock, and it runs noticeably quieter compared to the Gigabyte Gaming OC. So, I can say that the Gaming Trio combines the best of both worlds. Thanks to its strong cooling and overall balance, it definitely deserves a spot on this tier. ASUS TUF, a series that I deem as the best in the B tier, and in some cases, it's good enough to be considered A tier. With a clear difference between the Q and P BIOS modes, wide product range, pretty good VRM quality, powerful cooling system, and the usage of PTM pads, it's a model that you can choose with total confidence. We're now on the A tier, which is what many people's dreams are made of. But before we dive into the A tier, I need to tell you something important. As you know, I normally don't talk about this, but the majority of the viewers are not subscribed and don't leave a like on the video. This negatively affects the views. If you want to support me, don't forget to subscribe, leave a like and a comment. This way I can shoot more videos for you. Now let's dive into the A tier. Honestly, I find the cards in this tier unnecessarily expensive. Most users end up wasting their money as they don't use the extra features offered by these cards to its fullest extent. But if you can find a good deal, interested in overclocking, or want to flex with your graphics card, feel free to go with models on the A tier. MSI Vanguard. Honestly, it wouldn't be wrong to put this model on the B tier, above the TUF. Here, like in the Gaming Pro, I want you to view the Vanguard as the transition point between the B and the A tier. The Vanguard has better cooling compared to the TUF, but its VRM layout is just a bit weaker. Since most users care more about cooling than VRM quality, I decided to place this model here. Again, you can think of the MSI Vanguard as the line between the B and the A tier. You can place the TUF here as well if you'd like. Gigabyte Aorus Elite and Aorus Master. These are the cards I'm most confident about in the entire tier list. Contrary to the Gaming OC, there are obvious differences between the Q and P BIOS modes, like in the ASUS TUFs. Their coolings are more successful and they run a bit quieter. Their VRM quality is high-end as well, as you could guess. There's a wide variety of cards. It is named Aorus Elite up until the 5060 Ti and Aorus Master from 5070 and up. The Aorus Extreme line we know from the RTX 30 series is now only reserved for water-cooled models. In addition, in some GPUs there are also white variants named Ice. I think the product range of Aorus models is unnecessarily wide because GPUs below RTX 5070 Ti don't heat up too much to begin with anyways, and don't require a high-end cooling like in the Aorus. If you don't want to overspend, I wouldn't really recommend buying a card like the Aorus Elite. You can consider the Aorus Elite for the 5070 and up, but the price matters here. It sometimes can be found for reasonable prices, and in that case, it can be considered for upgrading to a high-quality model. Besides the price, the biggest con of these models is the noise level. As there are quieter cards in the A tier, I can't say Aorus cards are perfect. Even though they are higher quality compared to the Vanguard and TUF, they have some disadvantages compared to the models of other brands, which is why I'm placing it here. MSI Supreme. It's simply wonderful. In my eyes, this is the most appealing card in the A tier. Of course, this is just my personal opinion, but objectively speaking, I can say that it has the best cooling performance in the A tier. The transition between the Q and P BIOS modes is really good, and its VRM quality, even if it isn't as good as the GameRock, is pretty good as well. Since cooling performance is the top priority for most people, and as it runs quieter compared to the Aorus, I'm placing the MSI Supreme here. ASUS ROG Astral. In my previous tier list video, I acted a bit subjective and gave the throne of the ASUS ROG Strix to the Aorus instead, due to the coil whine. I won't do the same this time, else I won't be able to sleep at night. The ROG Astral is a monster that really needs to be tamed, so it's not a model I can recommend to everybody. Firstly, I'd like to start with its biggest con because there is some really annoying stuff about this card. Looking at cooling tests, we can see that Supreme cards are more successful. The reason for this is not that ASUS unnecessarily added a fourth fan. Astral is the card with the highest power draw and the best VRAM layout, and this allows for it to offer the highest performance with power draw figures momentarily reaching 700 watts in the RTX 5090. Of course, high power and high clock speeds mean higher temperatures. If we applied the same aggressive power consumption scheme on the Supreme as well, the test results would have been much more different. This high power consumption can lead to issues with the PSU as well. A PSU that normally can support the 5080 pretty well can end up falling flat. So, in summary, if you want a real monster, you have to provide it with the food it needs. Yes, its cons are really annoying, but despite that, the ROG Astral is still at the top of the A tier because, in terms of VRM layout, it is the best series in the market, and this is especially a nice detail for people who are interested in overclocking. Furthermore, the engineering on these cards is really high tier. There's a special department that inspects all the pins in the power connector and power fluctuations. This feature is especially great for the RTX 5090, as it lets you get early warnings if there's a loose contact or a potential hardware fault. Besides this, ASUS really raised the bar and added gyroscopes to these models. The GPU warns you if it sags due to its weight. Definitely an unnecessarily nice feature. There is nothing to do besides take your hat off to this engineering. Lastly, I need to say this. If you are just going to look at the cooling performance in game, the Supreme series is more suited towards you. But if you have more specific expectations like overclocking, retaining the value in the secondhand market, getting a unique product or design, and if your budget is sufficient, you can go with the Astral. If you had fun watching this video, I have similar tier list videos ranking the RTX 40 and the RX 7000 series. You can check those too if you'd like to. Alright, let's wrap up the video. If you liked the video, don't forget to hit the like button. If not, feel free to dislike. Stay mysterious until the next video. Take care, and bye.